Well, hello, and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I want to reflect a little bit on encouragement. Now, I wrote my first book because I was encouraged to do so by people who followed a travel blog I used to write. And, I was a guy, I was always able to find humor in pretty mundane situations, and traveling for business, as often as I used to travel for business anyway, could be mundane at times. I mean, it's a bit like Groundhog Day. And, I used to take the time when I was on planes or in hotel rooms to actually, put together some reflections or anecdotes on things I saw during the day or on the flight in the airport, et cetera. And people, they really liked what I was writing, and they encouraged me. They used to say things like, hey, when are you going to write a book about this? Or when are you going to write a book about your experiences? And, one time I actually did have a literary agent say to me that funny is money. So I said, okay, well, I like money. And I like to write. So I did put pen to paper. I started writing what became Return to Casa Grande. And throughout that whole process, I needed encouragement. I needed encouragement to get me started and to keep going. And then, now 7 novels later, I'm encouraged to keep writing by, people who I would consider fans, who ask me, when's the new book coming out? That's a question I get, at least once a year by somebody. Anyway, so 2 years ago this January, so coming up on my 2-year anniversary in comedy, I started doing open mic at comedy nights, open mic comedy nights at a place called the Stress Factory in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a great comedy club. And as a writer of novels, think about it, it takes a long time to get a reaction to something you've written. You write a story, then you rewrite it again, then you hire an editor who has you rewrite it again. So by the time it's available for sale, at least a year has passed. And by the time somebody who doesn't know you has read it and, posted a review on it, you're looking at maybe 16 months, having gone by. With stand-up comedy, though, that feedback is immediate. Either the audience laughs or they don't, or worse, they just talk over your set. Laughter in this case is the encouragement to keep getting up and doing it again. And I found that I got a tremendous amount of satisfaction by having that almost immediate validation that something I wrote was funny. Now, last year, I actually spoke with Pat Oates, who's a great stand-up comic based in Connecticut. He's a professional. He does this for a living. And he talked about his first time and the encouragement that he got from a friend. Have a listen to this.
When I first was hanging out with a buddy of mine that I've known since college, we were just hanging out one day, and he said, let's go to this bar and just get some wings and, go there. And we went there, and they were having a comedy contest in Naugatuck, Connecticut, some small bar. It was called Melissa's. We went there just to have wings and stuff. I did not know there was a local comedy contest going on. I also did not know that he signed me up for it. So we sat in the audience. They had 4 contestants. They announced before. One of them, actually, there was 3 judges. The owner of the bar, the owner's father, and a girl they were both trying to sleep with. And they were the 3 judges. And they sat at a table behind the stage like they were American Idol judges. And they were going to decide who won $100 for the comedy contest. It was a guy who just lost his job who looked like Joe Pesci. And he lost his painting job. So he needed $100 to pay off some bill or something. And he needed it bad. And all he did was like bad impressions of like Rodney Dangerfield. But he would have to say Rodney Dangerfield after because it was so bad you didn't know who it was. The second contestant was a magician who was trying to do card tricks in front of a drunk audience on a Friday night in Naugatuck, Connecticut. He was doing his cards, and someone made fun of him, and he threw the cards at them and just said, 52 card pickup, mother effer, and just boom, hit him right in the face. And so the third guy was actually the fry cook from the restaurant, and they had to tell everyone to stop ordering wings and tenders for a little bit so he could come up and perform with aprons, look with grease on him, and actually didn't do bad. Like SpongeBob jokes about being a fry cook. It wasn't bad. And they said, we have one more contestant. And they said, they read the name, they went, Pat Oates. I looked at my friend, and he goes, you can do this. I walked up. I made fun of the 3 judges. I made fun of the people in the room. I made fun of Naugatuck, Connecticut, how there's that weird smell on Route 8. No one knows what it is. I made everything going on, and I won $100. And when it was over, my friend looked at me and said, you're funnier than 3 people. That's a start.
Right.
And right there, I got the bug.
So that's Pat's story. He got, bitten by the comedy bug because a friend of his encouraged him to do a little comedy contest at a bar. And he was, I'm sure he was the funniest one up there. I can't imagine anyone upstaging the great Pat Oates. And another thing about Pat is he's actually a great resource to up and coming comics. He's very encouraging to young comics. He does have a great book out. It's called How Not to Suck at Comedy. So if you're an inspiring comic or someone, pick that up for them. They'd get a lot out of it. So going back to my own experiences with comedy, my brother Jimmy, who I've mentioned I know many times before on this podcast, has probably been the best source of encouragement for me when it comes to comedy. As a young comic, and not that I'm young age-wise, I'm 46. I could be the parent of most of the people, I quote-unquote started out with. And in fact, one guy, Nick Scopes, refers to me as his dad all the time whenever he brings me up on stage. It's kind of funny. Anyway, as a young comic, you've got to pay your dues. You've got to pay to play. You've got to, and that means really you just got to bring the audience. You bring the audience to the club. You've got to bring, 5, 6 people, whatever the number is. And in exchange for that, they come in, they buy drinks and food and all that, and they buy their ticket if it's that kind of show. In exchange, you get stage time. That's pretty much how it works. In my brother's case, he buys a lot of drinks, which is nice, and everyone's happy. I mean, I say most everyone's happy. The comics typically aren't happy. Most comics actually are not happy people, which I've come to realize, and that's actually a topic for another time. But when I say that Jimmy encourages me, he doesn't just do that by his words. He does it by his deeds. He does it by his actions. He's always comes to the shows. He always brings friends with him. And I'm thinking of you, Kelly, K-Dog, and Cliff, the dark one. You know who you are. So yeah, that encouragement, it can come in the form of words, but when it comes in the form of action, it's actually all the more powerful. And, incidentally, I can't wait until, COVID is in the rearview mirror and I can start performing again because I'm really itching to do so. I know there are people doing shows out there, but I'm holding off just to be safe. Got to be safe. So getting back to encouragement, I really do think that people say that the greatest gift you can give someone is the gift of your time. And I really do believe that. But giving the gift of encouragement has got to be a close second, right? Encouraging someone else got to be a close second to giving your time. And I guess in a way it is kind of, a subtask of giving time. Listen to me, subtask, like going into project management speak here. So here's the one big question I want you to ask yourself. Who is in my corner? Who is in my corner? Have you surrounded yourself with people who encourage you? Or are there people in your life who bring you down? Or worse yet, are ambivalent about the things you want to pursue? In many ways, I think that ambivalence, just not caring, is actually worse than kind of putting you down. Because at least people who put you down might take the time to listen to what you have to say and provide an opinion. But people who are ambivalent, well, that's I think that's a bigger problem. But don't get me wrong here. Having people who encourage you is not synonymous with having people who just tell you what you want to hear, because that won't do you any good. That doesn't do anybody any good. Having, encouragement is about having people who support you in your endeavors because they find joy in seeing you grow and seeing you succeed. Now, of course, we all have people in our lives, or maybe you don't. I know that, I've come across people, let's say, in my life who just don't have that encouragement gene. And I don't mean to suggest that they're bad people. That's not it at all. But for whatever reason, they just can never find the right words to say or to take an action that will be seen as encouraging to others. And I think these people are actually worst case scenario type people. For example, when some kind of negative thing comes along, these are the people who will always, have that knee-jerk reaction and say that the sky is falling.
Run for your lives! Everyone run for cover! SOS! Mayday! Mayday! Code Red! Duck and cover!
Well, there you have the great Zach Braff as Chicken Little. But these are people who they never see the glass as being half full. They succumb to fear. And I think that it really is fear that's at the root of why they have a hard time encouraging others. If you think about it, when you encourage someone else, you're making a commitment to them that you will stand behind them. You're going to be in their corner. But what if that doesn't work out? What if that other person fails? What if the person I'm encouraging fails and falls in their face? Am I responsible for their failure because I encouraged them? Maybe that's the thinking that, subconsciously, has people avoid, taking that risk to encourage someone. These are people who just, also maybe they also just have a tendency to make everything about them. I don't know. Anyway, as a father, I feel responsible for encouraging my children, especially as they're in college, because, I know that the decisions they're making now are going to have a tremendous impact on their lives. While doing so, I try and lean on some of the mistakes I've made during that period of time in my life. I try to turn them into lessons. Whether it was my hesitation to study abroad, which is something I never did, and I kind of look back on with a little bit of regret now, or maybe it was my myopic focus, in the social clubs I was a part of. I didn't do much outside of the Kappa Sigma fraternity, but, God knows there were a lot of other clubs that I could have explored and joined and kind of grown as a person by my participation in these things. Maybe it was, my not following through with certain career aspirations I had. I feel the need to encourage my kids to take this time and live, to try new things, to explore the world, because, I didn't do that enough when I was their age. And as a 46-year-old with 4 additional mouths to feed, and we can make that 6 if you want to count the 2 dogs, my time for, exploration now is really limited. So the way I see it, when encouraging others, we'd be wise to lean on our own personal experiences and the wisdom we've gained by living. This motivation to do this, comes from something that's quite selfless, which is the desire to see other people make good choices, that will be fulfilling to them in the long run. And it also comes from maybe a simpler desire, which is just to see, someone else happy, just to see someone else thrive. If I go back to those negative Nancys that I was referring to earlier, maybe that's where their blockage is, maybe for reasons they don't fully understand. Deep down inside, they're just not happy people, or they haven't learned how to find joy in their lives. And if my hypothesis about them having a tendency to kind of make everything about them has any merit, then it makes sense, because what do they get out of doing something selfless? As a result, they have a hard time encouraging others and lifting them up because they don't, frankly, get anything out of it. As my friend Greg Alpern would say, I don't know. I'm not Columbo.
Oh, one more thing before I forget. Well, listen, there's one more thing.
What, something else?
I don't know what's the matter with me. One other thing, the angle of the bullet.
Honestly, I defy you to find a better cop show than Columbo. It's just the best detective show ever made. They broke the rules. They really did. The audience knows who does it within the first 2 minutes. There's no mystery to the audience. The magic is seeing Columbo unfold the mystery. Anyway, thank you for that digression. I've told you a little bit about, people who encourage me, but I want to talk to you about some people who I try to encourage. This would be, of course, in addition to my children. I talked about that before. There's 3 I have in mind, and the first 2 are my mother and father. So this pandemic has been very hard on them, and I know it's been very hard on all of us, but they live 1,500 miles away in Florida, and they're very high risk because of their advanced age. Dad is 88, mom is 87. They've got pre-existing conditions. Dad has COPD. It's if he got COVID, it would not be a great thing. And on top of that, my father has had some other, significant health issues recently, including a blood infection and spinal stenosis, which really have both taken a toll on his mobility. And throughout his entire life, he'll be the first to tell you that he never took a sick day in the 43 plus years he spent with American Express. He was a very healthy guy. And it was really, not up until this year where his activities were kind of limited because of health. And his favorite activity, of course, is taking all of his friends' money on the golf course. He's a very, very good golfer. Even at his age now, he was shooting below his age up until this year. I'm very proud of him for that. Anyway, the downturn in his health, of course, has taken a toll on him emotionally, and he gets down in the dumps a lot. And I know he feels bad about it because he's always apologizing to me, which he really doesn't have to do. I completely understand the emotional toll that poor health has on people. So, I find myself having to encourage him with either little notes. I send him text messages, different points during the day. I'll send him a small gift, like a book in the mail. The man loves to read, so I'll send him a gift. And of course, I call them almost every day. So we do talk a lot. But, this toll on my dad also takes a toll on my mom. It impacts her. She's in good physical health, but she's got some short-term memory issues, and she could not live independently without my father. So when he's down or is experiencing some kind of a physical limitation, it impacts her. For one, she might have to rely on an aide or, someone else, when my dad can't help her. And the other way it impacts her is, of course, she's been married to my dad for 63 years, I want to say. So seeing someone you love and care about in declining health, takes a toll. So, I find that I have to be kind of like a cheerleader to my mom as well. But there's a third person who I find needs some encouragement and support. And that's really, one of my oldest friends, Chris Hart. So Chris has been a friend of mine ever since fourth grade. I moved to Connecticut in fourth grade. He changed schools, so we were kind of the new kids in a school, and we kind of bonded over that. And he, of course, became good friends with my brother, and we've been good friends, for a very, very long time. And he's facing some significant health challenges right now, and just to put it short, he needs a liver transplant. And I'm going to just share with you his story a little bit. Christopher Hart is a man who spent 25 years in Boston after graduating from the University of Connecticut. He was always very civic-minded. He volunteered his time and energy with the Franciscan Children's Hospital, also helped victims of Hurricane Katrina and the Special Olympics. And he started, helping with the Special Olympics from high school well until adulthood. Now, Chris was diagnosed with hepatic cell carcinoma, which is liver cancer. I hope I pronounced that right. It's liver cancer. No, I know how to pronounce liver cancer. Hepatic. I don't know. I'm not good with these medical terms. Anyway, Chris has liver cancer. He was diagnosed in 2017, and his first chemo treatment put him into a coma for several days, and that sparked a cardiac condition. And then he went into remission and then continued to run some of our beloved Boston venues. This is actually written by, I want to say this up front, I am borrowing these words from his fiance, Erin. They lived together up in Boston. He ran some beloved Boston venues such as a general manager and director of operations, but the cancer came back fiercely 1 year later, and he's been on daily chemo treatment since then, in addition to over a dozen different prescriptions a day. And to try and seek all potential medical options, treatments, and possible drug trials, Chris and Erin moved to the DC area in the summer of 2019, as there are so many case-specific specialty hospitals and institutions there. There were more options available to him than there were in Boston, so they picked up and moved. But unfortunately, the cost of the relocation, his insurance and out-of-pocket cost for treatment has become astronomical, and the two of them, Chris and Erin, have drained their savings to try and keep him alive. Erin got him listed on the transplant list at Georgetown University Hospital back in August. And, since then he's been, put onto the extended criteria list as it pains me to say this, but he's dying at a rapid rate of speed and requires Erin to be his unpaid caregiver. She's unable to work as he needs 24-hour care for everything from remembering his medication to meals and transportation, as he can no longer drive, and he's had to sell his car back in March. Now, just as context, Chris and Erin both work in the hospitality industry, and as you probably know, that industry has been decimated by restrictions around COVID-19. So neither one of them could really work. Even if Chris were healthy, he'd have a hard time making a living. Sadly, I want to tell you that cancer runs in his family, and it claimed the life of his younger sister, Kim, who was a friend of mine. Kim and I had a very nice friendship over the years, and I could go on and on about her story. But 6 years ago, she did pass away of brain cancer. And anyone who could have any empathy for their parents, Chris and Kim's parents, it's just the thought of, I'm a father of three. The thought of burying a child, let alone both of your children, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine having to do that. But, what we want to do is have them, not have to bury their son. They've already buried Kim. We don't want them to bury Chris as well. We want to have them be able to see their son get healthier and have the chance to live a happy and productive life, going back to, all those things he used to do as a contributing member of society. They didn't have that opportunity with Kim, because she passed away, and she passed away way too young. So there's a sense of urgency and compassion here. Chris is a guy who wants the chance to live, he wants to pay it forward. And if given the ability to afford the opportunity to receive the gift of a new liver, he won't take anything for granted. So, one of the things that I'm kind of getting to here, very long-winded way of doing it, by the way. Not that I need to tell you that. Your ears just told you that. His finances and Aaron's finances have been drained. They can't work. They spend a lot of their own savings moving from Boston to DC, and just the expenses of his daily medications alone is a drain. He has to have MRIs, and an MRI out of pocket can cost like upwards of $2,000. It's not pretty. So what my brother and I have done is put together a GoFundMe campaign to help offset the cost of his treatment. So yes, we are of course trying to encourage him to keep his spirits up, but we also want to kind of reduce some of the burden and stress that he and Aaron are facing. So if you can help out, please visit the GoFundMe link on this post and make a donation. So thank you for that. Now, 3 things you can take away from this episode. Okay, I always like to end these things with 3 things you can take away. Number 1, ask yourself who's in your corner. If you surround yourself with people who encourage you, you'll find the motivation to pursue your interests and, who knows, maybe do some great things. But conversely, if you have people in your life who make everything about them, it's time to really make some decisions about the role they will continue to play in your life. You might have to have some hard conversations. And number 2, providing encouragement really is the gift that keeps on giving.
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year.
Well, thanks for that reminder, Cousin Eddie. But providing encouragement doesn't cost you anything, and it can make a tremendous impact on someone's life. I'm sure that if you look around, there are people in your life who could use the gift of encouragement, so please consider giving it. And finally, number 3. Remember, encouragement can come in the form of verbal support, but it's most meaningful when there's actions behind it. So don't just tell somebody that you encourage them to do X, Y, or Z, but find a way to show your support. If your friend is a musician, go to their shows or their open mic nights. Same thing with comedians. If they want to be a writer, show your support by asking questions about their work and maybe even asking to read their work. That's a great way of showing some support. Really the possibilities to show your support are actually quite endless. Now, lastly, as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Uncorking a Story. And if you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, consider sharing it with a friend. Lastly, as I always do, because I'm a writer and a novelist, I need to remind you that books make great gifts. Thanks for listening.